Okay, so we're recording for Breaking Out Festival, and today's guest, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Jacko Hooper. I'm a singer-songwriter from Brighton, born and bred, and work in some other projects as well in music venues and promotions in Brighton.
Fantastic. So you're the founder of the Folklore Sessions, which has been running since 2014. So maybe talk to me about how that came about and the role you play in that, and some of the ups and downs and the challenges that you faced while running the Folklore Sessions.
Sure. So Folklore started as it was one sort of originally going to be a one-off gig at a pub that I used to go to a lot, and sort of turned into a monthly night of acoustic sessions. Originally, just mainly with my friends that I'd been playing with over the years, and that monthly night just sort of grew and grew and built its momentum and started being able to book slightly more established artists and as well as still supporting the grassroots. And then that went on to us working with other promoters and doing bigger events and sort of moving into stages at festivals and releasing records. And now we've got a radio show as well. And we're announcing sort of officially announcing our own music venue, which will be launching in July. So
fantastic stuff. Yeah. So in terms of Brighton as well, because it's such a musical city, there's so much, art and culture going on. So, what networking opportunities in the process of creating the Folklore Sessions, and as you say, the progress that you've made over the years, what sort, if we're talking to, say, BIM students, for example, who are either just moving into the area and getting used to the whole Brighton life scene, or who are just graduating and looking for more networking opportunities, what role does the Folklore Sessions play in something like that for young musicians who are up and coming?
I mean, it's been brilliant because it was kind of something that I wasn't expecting. I mean, the main reason I started doing it when I decided to do it every month was because I'm an active performer myself. I wanted to know that there was somewhere for me to play every month and hang out with my friends and sort of build like a sort of natural community. What it then turned into and what can happen with things like that, I found, is that the amount of bands that have actually started from meeting at Folklore, or like people that like shared the same bill and then become like, really good friends and done projects together. And it's basically like a really, it turned out to be a really great way to get so many like-minded people all in the same place consistently once a month in a very sort of relaxed way, because it was a free entry show. You went to the pub, you saw some great music, and those connections sort of happened quite naturally rather than sort of it was kind of like an unofficial networking event that no one knew they were part of.
Fantastic. So in terms of your experience both as a promoter and as a musician and organizing events, what are some of the skills you think that are necessary for people who want to move into your line of work? What sort of skills do you think they need to be successful and to start having success in that sort of line of work?
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me really is consistency, because these things do not happen overnight. And like I say, we'll be launching our own venue this year, and that's taken me since 6.5 years of consistent events, working in other areas of the industry as well, in terms of the promotion side. And I think to not rush the process, believe in your project and believe in what you are trying to build. And a lot of the time, I think people that do well in this industry, it seems to me, a lot of the time it's sort of last man or last woman standing. It's sort of like you just keep going, and it can be really difficult to do that. It can be really difficult to stay motivated when sometimes you can go a few months or whatever and things aren't happening, as it were. You just keep believing in the vision of whatever it is you're trying to build, and those rewards will come. And I'm a prime example of that. And I'm still sort of early in my journey, as it were. And I'm 6 or 7 years into it, and I still see myself as just getting to the point now where I'm like, okay, I'm now starting to build something that I wanted to.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you're also a booker for gigs and events at the Brunswick Pub. So yeah, maybe talk a little
Yeah,
bit about what role you play there and what is you know what what is the job about.
sure. So that's a really good example of the sort of consistency and what it can lead to, because I never sort of set out to be a booker or necessarily a promoter. My passion has always lied within performing, but by doing folklore and really enjoying that process and having that consistency and then that sort of gaining a reputation, I actually got a job offer out of it, which, you know, they don't come up often in this industry. It's you've got to really plug away. So I got the opportunity to go to the Brunswick and essentially be in charge of their diary and be the venue manager. They've got two spaces there. So we've got the venue, which is on the ground floor, which is 130 capacity. And then we've got the cellar bar, which is in the cellar, and 60 capacity. And pre-COVID in 2019, for that calendar year, I booked in over 500 events during that year across the two spaces. Some folklore shows and many, 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 many not. But again, it just enabled me to be around musicians and agents and promoters and record labels, even if it's just through an admin side of things every single day. And everything's a domino, you know, as soon as you start working with one agent, 10 others creep out the woodwork. Oh, have you spoken to Jacko about folklore? You know, it just, again, it can happen quite naturally, but it takes a lot of consistency. And my main job at the Brunswick is to keep that consistency and be booking shows as frequently as I can, as at a high standard, working with both established touring acts, but then also spending just as much time, if not more, on grassroots and unsigned acts and supporting the sort of Brighton ecosystem, really. It's quite a key part, a part of that in terms of venues, I think.
And where you have such a broad roster of events that go on at the Brunswick as well, are there different challenges involved with booking, say, I don't know, a jazz ensemble act versus a rock act versus a folk act? You know, what are the differences that you've experienced between putting on different events?
Yeah, it's you're right. The stuff that I book at the Brunswick is very, very eclectic. By virtue that we've got the two rooms, the main sort of situation we're in at the moment is that generally, although the cellar bar is a smaller space, it works a lot better for like heavier bands. We've had like punk bands down there, we've had like death metal down there, and then you come up the stairs and we've got, like you say, you could have like a 12-piece big band in the venue playing classical music. It's such a, you know, strong sort of divide in genre, but that's why I love it. That's why I love the job. But it does have its challenges, but again, I think so much of doing folklore, so much of being a musician, to be honest, is just problem solving. And I found that, you know, within reason, the best way to overcome them is you just do it. You dig in and you figure it out. And there's been some lessons along the way, of course. There can't not be. I've made many mistakes in my professional life, but it's part of, at the end of the day, you know, if it's not fun, if you're not having fun doing this work and this line of work, then, you know, you're not going to be in it for the vast amounts of money that are going to come flying your way. So you must enjoy the process as well. So I kind of see it as coming under that, you know, it's kind of enjoyable stress, as it were. It keeps things interesting.
Fantastic. So you briefly mentioned the impact of the pandemic. So obviously the live industry is practically non-existent. We've had things like putting events on over Zoom and people having to really adapt to some quite difficult circumstances. So over the course of the pandemic, what has your schedule looked like and how has it been affected?
How has it been affected? How hasn't it been affected? I think as we all have sort of suffered so much from it in the arts, but I think I knew that the way, and also a way I kind of got through the pandemic in terms of my workload in my life is very high, and that's kind of what I like. That's how I function. I like having a lot to do. So I knew that I needed to keep that going. So had to kind of think, yeah, how can I adapt to this situation to ensure that I'm still getting output for my own music and from folklore. And so therefore just really focused on the digital side of things and made sure that I was still producing a lot of content for folklore. The Brunswick was very difficult. Obviously that is literally a music venue. You're pretty limited there. We done a lot of online events and sort of like like sort of, you know, day festivals and on Zoom and things like that, but you can only do those things so many times, I think. And I think as the pandemic has gone on and on and on, people are just so ready for live music that those things aren't quite sort of scratching the itch, you know. So yeah, I focused on getting the online content more consistent than it used to be, and I started writing articles for folklore, so kind of doing more of the sort of blogging side, and I started focusing on our playlists and really pushing them, because I knew that I don't have a lot of time usually to sit around and write articles or reviews or basically create content for folklore, because I'm so often out and about doing things. So I figured, well, this is a good opportunity at least. If I've got a month of this, or 2 months or 3 months, and turned out it was a lot longer, but I can just go, okay, I still woke up and sort of did a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and just focused on those other elements, and just made sure that I wasn't slowing down, because I think you can still kind of gain a lot of traction in those areas even if you're not doing the live shows, because you've got that time. So I was recording and releasing music and doing that folklore stuff as much as I could, really knowing that that's going to end and I'm going to be back sort of in venues soon. So I think there is always stuff you can find, but I mean, it's not easy. The pandemic generally, I mean, it's not like being off work for a month, is it? The mental health implications are so huge. It's sort of, I feel like if anyone's done anything, then, you know, good work.
Excellent. Yeah. So I wanted to, so in terms of artists, you're working closely with other artists, and there are some people who you might see go on a journey from being, you know, maybe just a solo act to getting a band together to starting to release music. When you're putting your sort of promotion hat on, so to speak, when you're looking at a newer artist, what do you look for in their, is it their image or their presence or the music that they have? What sort of characteristics do you look for in an artist that you might keep your eye on and pay attention to?
Sure. I mean, it's going to sound so sort of, it might sound a bit cliche, but it is true. There will never, ever be anything more important than the music. That is first and foremost. It's almost like for me personally, I don't really acknowledge those other elements until I'm engaged with the music, and then I'll explore those in terms of if they've had any radio play, and what kind of press are they getting. And those things are more about decisions in terms of, if I now work with this artist or this band, trying to sort of gauge what kind of pull they might have, so I can know what sort of venue I want to work with and how best to promote it. But the initial thing is always the music, and with folklore, that was kind of my main thing for it, was that I wanted it to be, even if you didn't know the artist, you can guarantee it's high quality. So you go to a folklore show knowing it will be good because it's a folklore show, and you trust that brand to deliver that for you. So they might be up and coming, or they might just be getting started, but you go, well, it's got the stamp of approval, as it were. I've kind of done that work for them. Come to this show, it's going to be good. So that'll always be the first thing. But yes, there is. It'd be a lie to say that those other things don't come into play. I mean, image, not so much. For me, with what I do, I know that it's a huge part of it, but for my how I operate, it's fairly irrelevant, really. I look for the first things I look for in terms of industry would be any good radio spots. Again, kind of like those other stamps of approval, to see who else, if they're getting sort of good traction with BBC Introducing, or if they're working, if they've got any stuff going on with like Communion, or there's those labels and those things that you see and you go, okay, there's something going on here. I prefer to find them just before that bit. That's the more exciting bit, I think, before the machine has started rotating and spewing out all the algorithms and all the platforms. So, and that does happen a lot, that you do find those gems, and then a year or two goes by and you're like, yep, there it is. That's all the other bits are now being ticked off. But yeah, I'd say it would be the quality of the music, and again, more so than the importance of radio and blogs and that kind of thing, and streams. I know streams are a minefield. They're important, but I mean, again, I've booked acts that have literally millions of streams and have pulled 4 people on the door, and then I've booked people that have 28 monthly listeners and they've sold out a show in Brighton because they've got a good community here. So it's like, people really get stressed out about streams, and I get it, but it's not actually always the be all and end all, depending on who's looking at you. So yeah, I think that those are the things I initially go for, and then sort of take it from there. I mean, I guess there's different levels of artists, and I'll make decisions based on where they're at. And for me personally, I just love finding something that really excites me, and then from that I'll try and sort of do what I can from my side of things to maybe just lift them up slightly to that next level, and then and then off they go.
Fantastic. And I suppose on some level you're sort of more empathetic to the struggle that the artist goes through to push themselves, because you are yourself an artist. So in terms of managing your own music, are you a totally DIY artist, or do you have a team around you to help you with your work?
Now I am totally DIY. I have worked with different people and with mixed sort of results, I guess we could say. I've learned so much over the last sort of 8-9 years in terms of the industry side for my own music, and I'm actually quite content with how I operate and how I put out music. And yes, I mean, if the right offer came in, or if someone wanted to work with me from a particular label, or someone that I actually already really admired, then sure, great. You see what can happen from that. But I don't really. When I was younger, you start and you think, oh, I want to get signed and I want to work with this guy and do that, and it just changes, and it's not in a bad way. You just, I think I've realised that actually, instead of always trying to perhaps convince people that you're worth listening to, just build it yourself. Why am I sweating over this label that won't listen to my music? I'll just make my own label that is just as good. It will take longer, it'll be more hard work perhaps, but it's so much more your journey, I think. So yeah, I'm just on my own, and I have my release strategy, and I have my trusted people that I work with in terms of producers and mixing engineers and things like that. But I think there's a lot of tools now that enable to be an independent artist with relative success if you do it well. But it's changing all the time. Every year it's like, okay, new strategy to stay on top of things. So it's it's a whole other beast, but again, an enjoyable one, sometimes.
Well, if we go with like the phrase, like the success breeds success idea, that having generative success, where we're talking to BIM students, these are people who are producers, who are artists, who might want to go into the management line of things. Do you think there's sometimes a pressure on people to play up to what they expect will be popular, and they think that people want to hear, rather than playing their own music? And how have you interacted with that sort of idea? Are you more of a person that writes thinking in a commercial bubble, or are you just writing what you want to put on the page, basically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's of course it's something. I think all musicians basically start off by ripping off their favorite artists, right? It's like that's your influence, that's your inspiration, so you go for what you know and what you love. Again, I think that changes over time, but as someone that books artists, I mean, it's I can spot it straight away, you know. I look at so many. I spend every day of my life basically watching and looking and discovering music. So, um, you know, you can very, very quickly see when people have maybe taken it a little bit too far, and you're like, okay, you've obviously got talent, but you've just gone too far down that road. And whoever it is, you know, we've already got Ben Howard. We don't need another one. We've already got Lana Del Rey. I don't need another one. Bring something to me that is the next version of that. Or if it's not, if your thing isn't anything to do with that, then just do your own thing. Because I mean, it's said time and time again, and I made this mistake countless times when I was starting out, of trying to follow trends or being aware of them and thinking, right, you know I can write in that way, maybe I'll sort of bend to it. And it just, I mean, look, sure, maybe you could do it, and you know, 1 in a million it will work. Ben Howard and James Bay and all the, you know, Ed Sheeran and whoever, how big you want to get, they were never trying to be someone else. They were doing them, and that became the trend or whatever, you know. So I think by the time you copy someone well enough to have nailed it, it's moved on. So I think you're better off just honing your songwriting skills and perfecting your own craft, and of course soak up all the inspiration and influence from other artists. But if nobody will be interested if it's too similar, if it's direct copy, because we've already got it. We don't need it. So that's kind of how I view it now, but it took me a long time.
So thinking about like influences and inspiration, how about in your own music? Where do you take inspiration from?
Oh wow. I mean, I'd say most of my influences are fairly contemporary, rather than, you know, I've never been sort of like, I wasn't inspired by the Beatles or sort of, a lot of the sort of big songwriters of the 60s and 70s. For whatever reason, I don't really come from a musical family, that's the thing, so I didn't really grow up with it. I sort of found it, and when I was younger, I was my discovery was things like Muse and the Vines and Kings of Leon, and that was what made my brain explode and go, I need to do this. And then my own tastes and as a person, I've changed and gone along, and I make the music I do now. But I'm still very influenced by I'd say sort of cinematic or fairly like emotive songwriters, and that could be anything from artists like James Vincent Morrow, who's an Irish singer-songwriter, or someone like Chet Faker, who has almost slightly more hip hop influences in his production, all the way through to like Architects, who are a metal band. But the emotion that's within it, if I find it authentic, that's what makes me buzz. Even if I might pick out a nylon string acoustic and sing a little melody, it might have been from the back of listening to Architects or something. You know, it's whatever triggers that for me, I think.
Fantastic. And you've got an ever-growing catalogue of songs, and you know it's only gonna carry on and carry on. So your most recent release is This Was the Earth. So you know, what kind of creative processes went into creating a song like that, and what did you enjoy about the experience? And
it was so I sort of wrote and recorded that sort of towards the end of last year, with the idea of it being my first single for this year. And I mean, that was a good one because that was fairly collaborative for me, in the sense I worked with a new drummer for that one, and my producer sort of conveniently sort of got a fair amount of new toys, so we kind of were able to switch things up a little bit, and the track felt very quite dramatic. It's sort of intentionally, it's sort of about quite a dramatic subject, and the sort of the strifes of mental health, and I wanted it to be almost sort of over the top and sort of take ownership of it. And I think we achieved that with the music video and the production on it, and using slightly more there's like synth elements within there, which I haven't done a lot of times before. So yeah, it came together very quickly, that track. I think that was the song was written and demoed and written and recorded in a day, I think, and then it was probably over the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks that I then spoke to a drummer and sent him the track, and he sent me the files back and did it all online, because obviously we couldn't really get out and go anywhere anyway. So yeah, it was a very therapeutic experience, that one. It was a track that I knew wasn't a single, but I knew that I had to do. Which again is another thing that I like about being independent, is that I remember working on that track and being like, I have no idea like where this has really come from in terms of the musicality, or I don't know what this is, but I know, but something's telling me that I need to do this. So I'll do it and I'll release it, and I'll, and then it will exist, and it will be another chapter, and then you move on.
Fantastic. So yeah, I want to pick up on a point about it turning from, say, just yourself with your guitar and just penning some lyrics, to actually it becoming that full realized product, going from bedroom to studio, so to speak. So what helps you to realize, the direction you want a track to go in? And is there any point in the process where you have to, like rehash ideas, and have there been points where you've got to one point and you decide you don't really like it, so you want to take it in another direction? What experience have you had of that in your creative process?
Sure. I mean, in terms of working ideas and then sort of not really, connecting with it. I mean, that happens all the time. And often the situation I find myself in is, and a lot of my friends that are songwriters have said the same, that, generally the best ideas tend to come around quite quick. There are obviously anomalies that, you work tirelessly on something and you enjoy it at the end. But if I work on a song for several weeks and I'm getting into, I'm still on the same verse, I'm doing the same thing, I sort of go, well, maybe it's not that good then. And sometimes that's actually quite healthy, because you just go, well, I've written the song. It doesn't, just because you can doesn't mean you should in terms of production and releasing. Again, that's mistakes I think I've made in the past, where I've gone, well, I've made it now, I've spent weeks on this, it took me so long, I've spent money on getting it all together, let's release it, maybe someone else will like it. But then it tastes wrong, it's just not right. So I tend to demo things live, just with one mic and acoustic, and usually once I've got the structure down, I'll then re-record those elements again. The acoustic guitar and the vocal, or the electric guitar and the vocal, are generally how I write, and then kind of build from there. And then if I want production, if I want percussion or drums, things like that, will put them in myself, just with MIDI, just to get the idea down, and so I can sort of sit back and look at the structure on the screen and be like, right, that's where the drums are coming in. And sometimes I program the drums exactly how I want them, and then send them to the drummer and be like, that is it. And then put your own flavor, but that's what I want. And other times I go, what, I'm still not sure, but I trust you to bring something to this part. So mainly with drums. The other elements I'm usually a bit more fickle with, and it's my way or the highway kind of thing. But with drums, I physically can't do it, so I go, well, you've got to help me out. So that's generally my process. There are others, but in terms of my day-to-day sort of writing and recording routine, that's generally how I operate. And I think if the demo sounds good or interesting, then there's a chance I've got something. So I'll roll with it.
I mean, judging by what you've said, you've raised the point that maybe overproduction is sometimes the contributing factor to a song making it or not, because people sit there and it stews and doesn't end up anywhere. But in the age now where, if we're comparing mainstream pop music with the stuff that people are doing at a grassroots level, do you think there's sometimes a pressure on people to create music that has this perfect sound, so to speak, where you've got things like auto-tune and massive high budget production and layers of recordings and stuff? Which camp do you sit in? Because some people are more purist about it, and they think they want the more human element that can be connected with between the audience and the musician. But some people maybe sit in the camp of, oh well, the overproduction can sometimes be a good thing because it shows you how good production can be. It's like an example. Which camp do you sit in on that front?
For me personally, I guess because of the music that I resonate with, I'm all for the imperfections. I try hard to. Me and my producer are actually often quite sort of at war at this bit. He's a complete perfectionist and wants to ensure everything's on the grid and you know, as sharp as it can be. And I want things a little bit too scruffy sometimes, and we work well together for that reason. We kind of meet in the middle, or try to. For me, I think yeah, the day that we're purely listening to music that hasn't got those traits is a real shame. I just think you miss out on too much great music via the imperfections. I understand there's a place for, you know, very well produced music, if you want to call it that, or highly produced music, sure. But again, I think as an artist, you yourself know if that's what you need or not. I don't know many people that have discovered that and gone, oh, this now changes everything. I actually do want a highly auto-tuned voice. Or I think people like to dip their toes and then maybe they go in a bit too far and then they go, hang on, actually, you know, what do I want this to be? Because you can get carried away, of course. But even for myself, like I always still try and use, like I've got the Nord here, and if I'm playing keys, I'll always try and use that, so at least it's like going through an authentic instrument, as it were, rather than just, you know, I'd rather make a sort of half crap synth on that than using one that's already built in, because I want to play it and I want to feel it and I want that will come across. So yes, I think it depends on the sort of music you like, but for me personally, yeah, I want to hear those. I want to hear this, the chair squeak when they move, when they're recording, and you know, I want to feel like I'm listening to them play the song, not just something hugely elaborate. But again, I think there's a sweet spot, you know.
Fantastic. Yeah, that reminds me of there's an acoustic folk artist from like the 50s and 60s, John Fay, and he played like great slide guitar, and in the background of one of his recordings you hear his dog barking in the corner of the studio. So that's
It's perfect. I love that.
It creates that perfect nuance, and I totally get what you mean with that. It's good to have that relatable element, because I think maybe sometimes people forget that the artist is a human being too. You want to have that I guess.
Yeah, completely. And I think also there's always going to be an audience for it. I think people love, there's always going to be an audience for someone with a guitar and a voice, or someone with keys and voice, or, you know, that raw back to basics thing. There will always be an audience for it, because it connects with people, and that's what music is. It's trying to connect with people, or yeah, making someone feel something. Be that making them want to dance out their mind in a club, or if it's them sitting there and crying over some really melancholy song. They just want to feel something. So I wouldn't, if you write music in that ilk, and you're kind of going, oh yeah, you know, I don't know, though, it doesn't sound professional enough. I mean, if it sounds good, it sounds good. If you've got one mic and you can plug it in and you listen back to it and you go, that's good. Again, so will a promoter, so will a music venue, so will radio. It's like, if the song's good, the song's good, especially now, because everyone can do it from home. So you want things to sound, yeah, you want things to sound good, but not if it's at detriment to the song. You know, the song will always win.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to round off. Actually, are there any like, you know, tidbits, pieces of advice, because we're talking to students who are on the cusp of getting out into the world? Are there any real pitfalls or pieces of advice that you'd give to them that will set them in good stead to do what you've done and push themselves to get to where you've got to?
I think the when things changed for me personally was when I allowed myself to be open to collaboration, or merely allowing myself to be in those places. Like, I always found, because I'm a solo artist, I always had quite a narrow view of what I do, what I want, and how I'll get there. When I then started doing folklore and was all of a sudden working with so many different artists, it changed everything, absolutely everything, which is what, you know, one of the things that BIM is great for, is it can help you find those communities. So I would say that I think work with other people, find other like-minded people, and you will do that by being in the right places and by yeah, consistency is what I always say. I think just be consistent in your work output, and find those like-minded people, and they'll take care of you as much as you take care of them. So that would be my nugget.
Fantastic, Jacko. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
Just going to plug a couple of your socials. So we've got Jacko_Hooper on Instagram and Jacko Hooper on Facebook. And your latest single is This Was the Earth, which is out now on Spotify. So you can stream that on Spotify. Jacko, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure to have you. And thank you for the interview.
Yeah, my pleasure, mate. You take care.